All right, so we're diving into relationship dynamics today, and you've given us some really fascinating material to work with.
Yes.
A real roadmap to navigating those complex connections.
Yeah.
We're going to try to help our listeners decode the signs of relationship distress,
Okay.
explore the underlying causes,
Yeah.
and get into those aha moments that can really help you build stronger bonds.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah,
I think what's really interesting about the material is that it goes beyond just skimming the surface.
yeah,
It dives into the nuances of what can actually cause friction
right.
and how those issues then manifest.
Yeah.
It's almost like having X-ray vision.
I love that X-ray vision into the heart of the matter.
Exactly.
So let's start by talking about some of those distress signals,
Okay.
those red flags that tell us something might be a little bit off in a relationship.
Sure.
I'm thinking about those constant arguments that seem to erupt over nothing, or that feeling of walking on eggshells
Yeah.
around your partner.
Right, right. I mean, those are definitely some classic signs.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting was that the material also highlighted some of the less talked about indicators.
Oh, okay.
Like a decline in physical intimacy, or maybe even noticing your partner becoming more and more withdrawn
Yeah.
from their usual hobbies or their social circles.
Like those cracks in a building's foundation.
Exactly.
You might not notice them at first, but they can really lead to some serious structural problems down the line.
100%.
So speaking of foundations, let's talk about what actually causes these issues in the first place.
Okay.
The source material breaks down those root causes into three main categories.
Really? Okay, it does.
We have personal factors, interpersonal dynamics, and then those external pressures that just kind of seep into every relationship.
Right. And I think what's really fascinating is how often these different categories intertwine.
Yeah.
It creates a very complex web of influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not always a simple, straightforward answer.
Right. So let's try to untangle that web a little bit.
Okay.
Starting with personal factors.
Yeah.
What are some of the examples of those internal struggles that might be impacting a relationship?
Well, one that really stood out to me was this idea of unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
We all have this idealized image in our heads of what a relationship should be like,
Right?
often influenced by romantic comedies or even social media.
Yeah.
But expecting our partner to single-handedly fulfill every single emotional need
Oh, yeah.
is just setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Right.
It's like expecting a single tool to build an entire house.
I love that analogy.
You need a variety of tools.
Yes.
And sometimes you even need to call in the experts.
Right.
You can't do it all on your own.
And recognizing that our partners are human, not superheroes.
Exact.
I think that ties into another personal factor that the source material mentioned. Emotional baggage.
Oh, for sure.
We all have past experiences that shape us.
Yeah.
But sometimes those old wounds can create roadblocks in our current relationships.
Absolutely. It's like carrying around this invisible suitcase
Yeah.
filled with past hurts and insecurities.
Oh, yeah.
You might not even realize how much it's weighing you down until you start to unpack it.
Right.
And that's where things like self-awareness and individual therapy can be so valuable.
So it's not always about blaming our partners for our unhappiness.
Right.
But recognizing our own contribution to the dynamic as well.
100%.
Now, what about those interpersonal factors?
Okay.
The things that happen between the two people in the relationship.
Well, communication is always a big one.
Of course.
But the material went deeper than just saying, talk more.
Right.
It highlighted the importance of understanding different communication styles and how those differences can lead to misunderstandings.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine one partner speaks in a very direct, assertive style, while the other one uses a more indirect, passive approach.
Right.
It's almost like they're trying to have a conversation in two different languages.
It's like they're saying the same word, but it means something totally different to each of them.
Exactly.
And I think that's where the emphasis on active listening comes in.
Yeah.
It's not just about hearing the words,
Right.
but about really understanding the underlying emotions and needs being expressed.
It's like being a detective,
Yeah.
You're searching for those nonverbal cues and trying to really understand the message behind the message.
Right. And it requires us to be fully present,
Yes.
putting aside our own distractions and judgments.
Absolutely. It's about creating that safe space
Yeah.
for open and honest dialogue.
Which is so much easier said than done,
Oh, for sure.
especially when trust has been broken.
Right.
We've all heard that saying, trust is like a mirror.
Mm.
Once it's broken, it's hard to put back together.
Yeah.
But the material suggests that there are ways to rebuild that foundation,
Yeah.
even after a major crack.
There are. And it requires a deep commitment from both partners.
Okay.
It's not a quick fix. It's a process
Right.
that involves consistent honesty, sincere apologies, and a willingness to make amends.
Right. So it's about proving your trustworthiness through actions,
Yes.
not just words.
Exactly.
And I think that's where forgiveness comes in,
Yeah.
not condoning the behavior,
Right.
but releasing yourself from that grip of resentment.
It's a powerful act.
Yeah, and allowing
Well,
yourself to move forward.
But it's also important to note that it's a very personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something you can force or rush.
Right.
And sometimes seeking professional guidance through couples therapy can be really helpful.
Right. It can give you the tools and the support to navigate that complex terrain.
Exactly.
You've got those personal factors, those interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah.
And now I'm really curious to explore those external factors, those things that can really kind of rock even the most solid relationship boat.
Mm.
I'm thinking about those life stressors that can create such a ripple effect in our personal lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Job loss, financial strain, even those societal pressures we face every day.
Those are definitely heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And the material does a great job of diving into specific examples that are particularly challenging for couples.
Like what?
Well, imagine navigating the transition to parenthood or caring for aging parents,
Yeah.
while also trying to maintain your own relationship.
Right.
Those are really tough life stages that can put immense pressure on any couple.
It's like trying to sail through a storm.
It is.
You need a strong captain, a resilient crew, and a really sturdy ship to weather those rough waters.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the material's emphasis on building a support network outside of the relationship comes in.
Oh, 100%.
Having friends, family, even a therapist to talk to
Yeah.
can really provide that much needed lifeline.
It's like having a network of buoys.
Yeah, to help keep you afloat.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that seeking help is not a sign of weakness.
Okay.
It's actually a sign of strength
Right.
and a commitment to navigating those challenges in a healthy way.
So we've talked about those distress signals, the root causes.
Yeah.
We've even touched on some potential solutions.
We have.
But now I'm really curious to dive deeper into those practical strategies for building those stronger, more resilient relationships.
Yeah.
What are those actionable takeaways that listeners can start implementing, like today?
Well, that's where things get really exciting, and that's what we'll be unpacking in part 2.
Okay, great. So stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah, we'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive on relationship issues. It's like we're on this archaeological dig,
Yeah.
carefully unearthing all these layers of understanding to uncover those precious gems of connection.
I love that. And in the last segment, we really unearthed those potential cracks in the foundation.
Right.
Those distress signals and those underlying causes that can really sabotage a relationship.
They can.
But now I'm so eager to excavate those solutions.
Okay.
Those practical tools for building stronger, more resilient bonds.
Yeah, and one of the most powerful tools we have in our relationship toolkit
Okay.
is the art of communication. But as we've discussed, it's not just about talking more.
Yeah.
It's about talking better.
Right.
And there's a technique that the source material highlighted that really resonated with me. It's called nonviolent communication.
I have heard of that. Remind me, what's the core concept behind it?
So it's all about shifting our language away from blame and judgment
Okay.
and moving it to a place of empathy and understanding.
Okay.
It encourages us to express our needs and feelings in a way that doesn't attack or criticize the other person.
So instead of saying you always leave your clothes on the floor, you might say something like, I feel frustrated when I see clothes on the floor because it makes me feel like our shared space isn't respected.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You see how that shift in language just takes the sting out of the message?
it does. Yeah.
It's not about blaming your partner. It's about expressing your own feelings and needs
Right.
in a very vulnerable and honest way.
And I imagine that creates a much safer space for the other person to actually hear what you're saying
Yes,
rather than just getting defensive.
absolutely.
Now, the source material also dives into another communication technique that we touched on earlier, active listening.
Active listening, yes. It's like gold in the realm of communication.
It is, it is.
It's about going beyond simply hearing the words.
Right.
It's about really turning into your partner's emotional state.
Okay.
You know, paying attention to their body language, their tone of voice.
Yeah.
Even those subtle pauses and hesitations that can reveal so much.
It's like reading between the lines.
It is.
And I imagine it takes a lot of conscious effort.
It does.
Especially in our distracted world.
Yeah.
You know, we're so used to multitasking, scrolling through our phones while we're having a conversation.
Right, exactly.
Active listening requires us to put all those distractions aside.
Yes.
And really focus on the person in front of us.
It does. It's about being fully present in that moment.
Right.
And silencing that inner voice that's already formulating a response.
Oh, yeah.
Before the other person has even finished speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
And it also involves, asking clarifying questions, reflecting back what you've heard, validating their feelings, even if you don't agree with them.
It's about making the other person feel seen and heard.
Yes.
Which is such a powerful gift to give someone you care about.
It is.
Now, the source material also acknowledges that sometimes even with the best communication skills, couples might need a little bit of extra support.
They might, and that's where professional help can be so valuable. Couples therapy can be an incredible resource.
Yeah.
For navigating those deeper issues or those communication patterns that are really hard to break on your own. It's like having a relationship coach in your corner.
Okay.
Someone who can provide a neutral perspective and guide you through those tough conversations.
It's like having a referee for those arguments that just seem to go in circles.
Exactly.
Someone to help you play fair and actually listen to each other.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that seeking professional help is not a sign of weakness.
Right.
It's actually a sign of strength and a commitment to investing in your relationship's well-being.
Now, in the last segment, we talked about the challenge of rebuilding trust after a betrayal.
Yeah.
And the source material emphasizes that it's not just about saying, I'm sorry.
Right.
It's about taking concrete actions to demonstrate your remorse.
Yes.
And rebuild that shattered foundation.
It's like repairing a precious vase that's been broken into 1,000 pieces.
Wow, yeah.
It takes time, patience, and meticulous effort to put all those pieces back together.
Right.
And even then, the cracks may still be visible.
Right.
A reminder of the past.
So it's not about erasing the past.
Yeah.
It's about learning from it.
Yes.
And building something stronger in its place.
Exactly.
What are some of those concrete actions that the source material suggests?
One of the most important steps is full transparency.
Okay.
It's about being completely honest about your actions and your intentions.
Yeah.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Right.
No more hiding or minimizing the truth.
Okay.
Lay all your cards on the table.
Yeah.
And allow the other person to see your genuine commitment to change.
So it's about earning back that trust.
Yeah.
Through consistent honesty and follow through.
Yes.
It's about showing up differently.
Yes.
Not just saying you've changed,
right,
but actually demonstrating it through your behavior.
Exactly. And that involves setting clear boundaries.
Okay.
And sticking to them.
Right.
If you've betrayed your partner's trust in the past, you need to show them that you respect those boundaries and that you won't cross those lines again.
And I imagine those boundaries might need to be renegotiated.
They might.
What was acceptable in the past might not feel safe or trustworthy anymore.
Exactly. It's about having those open and honest conversations about what each person needs to feel secure and respected in the relationship.
Right.
And it requires a willingness to compromise and adapt to those evolving needs.
So it's not just about saying the right words.
Yeah.
It's about backing those words up with consistent actions.
Exactly.
Now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about fostering healthier relationship dynamics in general.
Okay.
The source material really dives into the importance of respecting boundaries, balancing power dynamics, and supporting each other's growth.
Those are all essential ingredients for a thriving relationship.
They are. They are.
Let's start with boundaries.
Yeah.
They're like these invisible fences that define our personal space, our needs, our limits. And just like with property lines, it's important to respect those boundaries, even if you don't necessarily agree with them.
It's about recognizing that you're two separate individuals.
Yes.
With your own thoughts, feelings, and needs.
Absolutely.
And it's okay to have different preferences and boundaries.
Yeah.
As long as you communicate them clearly and respectfully.
Exactly.
It's not about building walls to shut each other out.
Right.
It's about creating a safe and healthy space where both individuals can thrive.
I agree.
Now, when it comes to power dynamics,
Yeah.
it's about recognizing those subtle, or sometimes not so subtle, imbalances that can create tension and resentment in a relationship.
Absolutely.
We often think of power in terms of dominance or control.
Right.
But it can manifest in much more subtle ways, right?
I can.
Like one partner consistently making decisions without consulting the other.
Yeah.
Or one partner feeling like their voice isn't valued or heard.
Right. It's important to be aware of those dynamics.
Yeah.
And to consciously work towards creating a more equitable partnership.
Right.
And that might involve having some sometimes uncomfortable conversations about who's making the decisions, who's doing more of the emotional labor, and how to redistribute those responsibilities in a way that feels fair to both partners.
It's like recalibrating that seesaw.
It is.
Finding that balance point where both people feel like they have equal weight and influence.
Exactly.
And speaking of balance, let's talk about supporting each other's growth.
Yes.
Relationships should be nurturing environments.
They should.
Where individuals feel encouraged to pursue their passions and become the best versions of themselves.
It's like being each other's cheerleaders.
Yes.
Celebrating each other's wins.
Yes.
Offering support during setbacks. And creating that safe space for exploration and growth.
It's like recognizing that growth is an ongoing process.
It is.
And our partners are going to evolve over time.
They are.
And instead of resisting that change, embrace it.
Yes.
As an opportunity to deepen your connection.
Absolutely.
And discover new facets of each other.
It's like those trees that grow side by side.
Oh, yeah.
Their branches might intertwine, but they still have their own unique shape and direction.
Now let's move on to a topic that can be particularly challenging for couples.
Okay.
Adapting to change.
Adapting to change is...
Life throws us curveballs.
It does.
And relationships need to be flexible enough to withstand those unexpected twists and turns.
Absolutely. And the source material really highlights stress management as a key factor in navigating change. When individuals are feeling overwhelmed by external pressures, it can very easily spill over into the relationship, create conflict and tension.
Like trying to cook a meal in a kitchen that's on fire.
Exactly.
You need to put the fire out first.
Yes.
Before you can focus on creating something nourishing.
You got to take care of the basics first.
Yeah.
And that's why prioritizing self-care and finding healthy ways to cope with stress is so important.
Right.
Both for our own well-being and for the health of our relationships.
It's about putting on your own oxygen mask first.
Yes.
You know, as they say on airplanes.
Right.
You need to be in a good place to be able to support your partner effectively.
Absolutely.
Now, the source material also emphasizes the importance of setting shared goals as a way to navigate those major life transitions that inevitably come our way.
They do.
Whether it's buying a house, starting a family, transitioning into retirement. Those shared goals can really provide a sense of purpose and direction as a couple.
It's like having that shared compass. It helps us stay aligned, even when we're venturing into uncharted territory.
And it's not about having identical goals.
No.
It's about finding those areas of overlap.
Right.
Where our individual aspirations can complement and support each other.
Exactly. It's about creating that win-win scenario. Where both partners feel like their needs and desires are being honored.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about communication throughout this whole deep dive.
We have.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how communication plays a role in adapting to change.
Well, when it comes to navigating change, communication is like that bridge that connects us to our partners. It allows us to share our hopes, our fears, our vision for the future, even when those visions might be evolving.
It's about staying curious about each other's inner world.
Yes.
Right? Checking in regularly to see how those dreams and desires might be shifting.
Absolutely.
And being open to adjusting our course as needed.
Yeah. And it's also about being honest about our own struggles. You know, when we're going through a period of change, it's okay to admit that we're feeling uncertain, or scared, or even overwhelmed.
Vulnerability is such a powerful tool for connection.
It is.
It allows our partners to see our humanness and offer their support.
It's about creating that safe space where we can just be ourselves, even when we're not feeling our best.
Now, before we wrap up this segment, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. The idea that not all relationships are meant to last forever.
That's right.
It's a tough reality to face.
It is.
But I think it's so important to acknowledge.
It is.
Sometimes, despite our best efforts, relationships reach a point where it's healthier to let go.
It is. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's a sign of growth and self-respect
Yeah.
to recognize when a relationship has run its course.
Right.
And to make that difficult decision to move on.
And I think it's important to remember that letting go doesn't diminish the value of the relationship.
No.
Or the lessons we learned along the way.
Right.
Every relationship, whether it lasts a lifetime or a season,
Yeah.
has something to teach us about ourselves and about love.
Beautifully said. And I think that brings us to our final provocative thought.
Okay, I'm all ears.
You know, we've explored all these different strategies for navigating relationship challenges.
But imagine the possibilities.
Okay.
If we shifted our focus from problem solving to problem prevention.
Interesting.
What if we applied these principles proactively?
Okay.
Nurturing our relationships with the same care and attention that we give to our physical health or our careers.
It's like investing in preventative health care for our relationships.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just as we go for regular checkups and prioritize healthy habits to prevent illness.
Yes.
We can cultivate healthy relationship habits
Absolutely.
to prevent major issues from arising in the first place.
And those habits include open communication, active listening, expressing gratitude, respecting boundaries, supporting each other's growth.
It's about making those small, consistent deposits of love and attention into that relationship bank.
Exactly.
So we have that reserve to draw from when those inevitable challenges arise.
Beautifully said. It's never too early or too late to start cultivating those healthy relationship habits.
So as we wrap up this segment,
we invite you to reflect on your own relationships.
Yes.
What steps can you take today to cultivate stronger, more fulfilling connections?
Remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
It is.
And every step you take, no matter how small, can make a world of difference.
We'll be back in just a moment with the final part of our deep dive.
We will.
Welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into relationship issues. You know, it feels like we've covered so much ground already, from those initial distress signals to practical strategies for building those strong bonds.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we wrap up, I'd like to circle back to something we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
That idea of adapting to change.
Yes, the ever-evolving landscape of relationships.
Right.
It really is like navigating a winding river, you know? There are going to be those calm stretches, maybe some unexpected rapids.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe even a waterfall or two along the way.
And that's where the source material's emphasis on building resilience really resonates with me. It's not about avoiding those rough waters altogether.
Right.
It's about equipping ourselves with the skills and support to navigate them successfully.
Absolutely. And one of the key components of that resilience is flexibility.
Okay.
You know, being willing to adapt our expectations, our communication styles, even our roles within the relationship as those circumstances change.
I think of it like a dance.
Okay.
Sometimes you're leading, sometimes you're following, and sometimes you're just improvising altogether.
Yeah. The important thing is to stay in sync with your partner, even when the music changes.
I love that analogy, finding that flow together, even when the steps get a little tricky.
Exactly.
And one of the biggest challenges to that flow is, of course, stress.
Right.
You know, when we're feeling overwhelmed by those external pressures.
Yeah.
It can be so hard to stay present and connected with our partners.
It really is. It's like trying to have a romantic picnic in the middle of a hurricane.
Exactly.
You're so focused on just surviving the storm.
That you forget to enjoy the company.
And that's why the material emphasizes developing those healthy coping mechanisms for stress.
Right.
It's about finding those outlets that help us de-stress and recharge.
Right.
Whether it's exercise, meditation, spending time in nature, or even just having a good laugh with friends.
It's about recognizing our own stress triggers.
Yes.
And developing those self-care practices that help us stay grounded and centered.
100%.
Even when life gets a little chaotic.
Because when we're taking care of ourselves, we're so much better equipped to show up for our partners.
Right.
In a loving and supportive way.
Now, the source material also highlights the importance of setting those shared goals as a way to navigate those major life transitions that inevitably come our way.
They do.
You know, buying a house, starting a family, transitioning into retirement. Those shared goals can provide a real sense of purpose and direction as a couple.
It's like having that shared compass, you know?
Right.
It helps to keep us aligned, even when we're venturing into uncharted territory.
And it's not about having those identical goals.
No.
It's about finding those areas of overlap.
Right.
Where individual aspirations can really complement and support each other.
It's about creating a win-win scenario.
Yeah.
Where both partners feel like their needs and desires are being honored.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about communication throughout this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how communication plays a specific role in adapting to change.
Well, when it comes to navigating change, communication is like the bridge that connects us to our partners.
Okay.
You know, it allows us to share our hopes and fears and our vision for the future.
Right.
Even when those visions are still evolving.
Yeah, it's about staying curious about each other's inner world.
Exactly.
Checking in regularly.
Yes.
To see how those dreams and desires might be shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And being open to adjusting our course as needed.
Yeah, and being honest about our own struggles, too. When we're going through a period of change, it's okay to admit that we're feeling uncertain.
Right.
Or scared or overwhelmed.
Yeah, vulnerability can be such a powerful tool for connection.
It really can. It allows our partners to see our humanness and offer their support.
It creates that safe space where we can just be ourselves.
Yes.
Even when we're not feeling our best.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up this entire deep dive,
okay,
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
That idea that not all relationships are meant to last forever.
That's right.
It's a tough reality to face, but I think it's so important to acknowledge.
It is.
Sometimes, despite our best efforts, relationships reach a point where it's just healthier to let go.
It is, and that's okay.
It's okay.
It's a sign of growth and self-respect.
Yeah.
To recognize when a relationship has run its course and make that difficult decision to move on.
And it's important to remember that letting go doesn't diminish the value of the relationship.
No, it doesn't.
Or the lessons that we learned along the way.
Exactly.
Every relationship, whether it lasts a lifetime or a season, has something to teach us about ourselves.
Yeah.
And about love.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into relationship issues.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical takeaways that you can apply to your own life.
I hope so.
And remember, the power to create positive change in your relationships really does lie within you.
It does.
Until next time.